The presentation will focus on several projects in Europe. The projects are divided into the categories: residential projects, city parks, streets and squares, brownfield revitalization, peri-urban landscape and open landscape. Through these examples, we would like to demonstrate approaches how to create valuable urban open spaces using the concept of blue, green, gray, BBG, infrastructure and principles of resilient cities. Residential project in Malmö, Sweden, is the third largest city in Sweden and part of the Öresund region. The city with over 360,000 residents is strongly connected to Copenhagen. It is often described as a post-industrial transformation city where ambitious sustainability targets were paired with efforts to deliver high living standards. A key reason is its unusually holistic sustainability brief and collaborative planning approach, creative dialogue, which aligned architecture and landscape architecture with energy, water, stormwater, waste, and biodiversity goals. Malmö was among the first European cities to embed stormwater management directly into planning processes and deliver it at district scale. Western Harbour, Västra Hamnen, and the Bo 01 district demonstrate how stormwater can become part of everyday urban design and public art. Runoff is guided through neighborhoods via an interconnected system of open channels and streams. In some places, water appears in public squares as sculptural elements. The system begins with green roofs, detention ponds in courtyards, and infiltration through gravel or pervious paving. Water then moves through narrow surface runnels, channels into rain gardens and receiving canals. Finally, it is discharged to the sea without contamination from wastewater or brownfield pollutants, because these are handled through separate treatment systems. Bo 01 is also associated with a fully renewable energy supply, 100%, and generous public, open space despite high density, with parks, streets, and waterfronts designed to support everyday social life and well-being. Eco-City Augustenborg, Ecostad Augustenborg, is a major Malmö regeneration project where climate adaptation is built into the public realm. Between 1998 and 2002, the city and partners implemented a program to improve social, ecological, and economic conditions. A central step was disconnecting stormwater from the combined sewer system and managing it through a visible, surface-based network. Around 6 kilometers of canals, channels and 10 retention ponds convey runoff from roofs, streets, and courtyards through trenches, ditches, ponds, and wetlands, with overflow sent to conventional pipes only when necessary. Residential project in Groningen Bispeparken, Denmark, is a 20,000 square meters transformation of the outdoor spaces of a 1950s social housing estate in Copenhagen's Nordvest district. It is also called Climate Park. The goal was to turn derelict, unsafe lawns with poor stormwater performance into a nature-based climate adaptation park that also delivers strong social, ecological, and cultural value, captured by the project's idea that form follows nature. A connected system of 18 bioswales across the sloping site collects, holds, and infiltrates more than 3,000 cubic meters of rainwater from the park plus adjacent streets. There are 5 nature topologies, with social roles. 1. Bio-oases, wet zones, prioritizing wildlife. 2. Between the trunks, small dry biotopes, for intimate play, relaxation. 3. Common lawns for sports, markets, community events. 4. Pocket squares for informal gathering between buildings, and 5. Bunker hills reusing Cold War bunkers as flexible, seasonal social terrain, sun-catching, sledding, etc. The park adds 149 trees, 23 species, and over 4 million seeds via tailored seed mixes, using native species and supplementing preserved historic buckthorn for a more resilient, varied plant community, managed through a plan balancing wild and orderly, which significantly contribute to increase the biodiversity of the site. The park opened the 31st of August 2024. Shortly after, a major storm flooded other infrastructure, while the park functioned as intended. Residential project Park pod Plachtomy is a contemporary neighborhood park in Brno Nový Liskovac, Czech Republic. Park was built between 2011-2012 and it has 32,000 square meters. The design is organized by a green perimeter, mature trees and continuous shrub groups, and a clear internal split, a recreation zone with play elements, and a more nature-based zone with a pond and flower-rich meadows. The pond is the compositional center. Planting is kept mainly to solitary trees to preserve openness and sightlines. A key innovation is water management. The pond was conceived as a pilot stormwater project, fed by rainwater captured from nearby tower block roofs, conveyed by underground piping that transitions into an open channel near the pond. It functions as both an amenity and a retention basin, about 630 cubic meters at normal level and up to 890 cubic meters during intense rainfall, while operating as a natural biotope without artificial filtration, with attention to supporting fauna. City Park Helmut-Zilk Park, Vienna, Austria, is a major new urban park of about 8 hectares, created during redevelopment around Vienna's main station on former railway, Freightland. The core concept is a large, open central lawn, meadow that works as the park's main commons for informal sport, play, sunbathing, and everyday leisure. Facilities include playgrounds for different age groups, community, neighborhood gardens, supporting local food production, a sun deck, and a cafe that encourages longer stays and social life. The park also offers a 1,400 m² motoric park, movement, skills area, a dog zone, drinking fountains, seating, and habitat-focused elements such as butterfly meadows. Park is often described as one of Vienna's most significant new park projects in decades. Key design priorities include climate adaptation, mitigation, biodiversity support, and creating seepage areas for rainwater infiltration. Square in Vlani in Slovakia. Rural park squares with water retention measures. This project upgrades the center of the village through a pair of connected park squares, one by the church and one by the municipal office, designed as a single, continuous compositional and urban ensemble. The goal was to create a contemporary, green village square that keeps the rural character while responding to climate change through blue-green infrastructure and nature-based water retention. Realization was during 2022-2023. The area is 6,322 square meters. Water retention here includes a large rain garden, underground storage tanks, used for irrigation, a shallow planted swale capturing runoff water and permeable paved surfaces. Street in Vienna, Austria, is often presented as a city where everyday comfort is supported by a strong urban green structure. Cool Streets is not as a single project, but as a citywide cooling culture, a combination of parks and forests, street trees, shaded public space, green facades, and accessible water that together reduce heat stress during hotter summers. Vienna has over 50% green cover, and within its boundaries about 1,000 hectares of parks and forests, giving residents many options to escape heat while also strengthening urban climate resilience. A key message is that cooling is treated as a planned, funded adaptation priority, not only as a beautification agenda. Livable Climate Model City Project is supported with €100 million, 2020 to 2025, to counter the urban heat island effect by creating new green spaces and by using green facades where dense urban fabric limits the possibility of building new parks. Brownfield Revitalization Park am Gleisdreieck in Berlin, Germany, is the major inner-city park created on former railway land in Kreuzberg, Schöneberg. It emphasizes the site's post-industrial DNA. After 1945, the former Anhalter and Potsdamer rail yards became long-standing wasteland, and the project is framed as a reintegration of this enclave back into Berlin's urban fabric. A key character is the elevated, plateau-like topography about 4 meters above street level combined with visible railway relics, which is park's uniqueness in Berlin. Design-wise, the page stresses a deliberately minimal, no decoration approach. The park is returning landscape architecture to basic essentials, where atmosphere comes from fine detailing, sensual materials, and vegetation, rather than ornamental elements. The core spatial idea is a clear, large-scale structure that stages the contrast between grown, ruderal nature and intentionally built vegetative and architectural interventions. The narrative lists a sequence of complementary park scenes, meadows, tree backdrops, forest, nursery, terraces, small woods, sports tracks, a central plaza, and highlights signature objects such as 80 meters long bench sculptures on terraces and a line of luminaires like folded masts that read as a site-wide sculptural system. The management of park aims to balance nature conservation and recreation, keeping parts of the spontaneous ecological diversity that developed during the wasteland period. There were decades of local campaigning and involvement, including pilot projects like intercultural gardens and a nature experience area for children initiated by residents. Brownfield revitalization. Fornebu, near Oslo, Norway, is an example of major transformation of the former airport peninsula into a multifunctional urban district with housing, workplaces, parks, and significant blue-green stormwater systems. The airport was built between 1934 to 1938, opened in 1939, and operated until 1998. Redevelopment began in the late 1990s and is planned for completion around 2030. The spatial concept, based on a competition proposal, organizes development around a central park with radial green extensions reaching toward the coasts, with dispersed residential neighborhoods located between these green fingers. Sustainability has been a strong driver, especially through technical solutions and tightened state and local regulations encouraging energy-efficient and ecological approaches. Mobility policies also supported this shift. Parking provision was intentionally limited in support a more walkable, transit-oriented district. A key ambition in the Fornebu master planning concept was to bring nature back into a site that had been intensively engineered for aviation, by structuring the district around 1. A large central park, 2. Radial, green fingers extending between urban blocks toward the Oslo fjord, plus 3. Visible stormwater landscapes, depressions, brooks, water elements, as everyday public space infrastructure. This is basically a blueprint for blue-green-gray integration. Mobility plus buildings, gray, are planned together with open space structure and water systems, blue, green, instead of treating drainage as hidden engineering. The Central Park of 200,000 square meters described as one of Norway's most ambitious urban parks initiated since Vigeland. The park is designed with paths, cycling routes, water mirrors, basins, bridges, play and exercise elements, connecting different parts of Fornebu. Landscape architecture is credited to Bjorbekk and Lindheim, with water design, treatment collaboration involving Atelier Dreisidal, and engineering partners such as Norconsult noted in project descriptions. A recurring theme is preserving parts of the airport identity, selected structures, traces, while shifting the land use to a civic district. The redevelopment brief explicitly included listed buildings and visibility of airport history among key constraints, opportunities. Fornebu is often cited because it combines, in one redevelopment, stormwater as public realm, water features plus treatment plus retention integrated into parks and streetscapes. A connected park framework from center to fjord, habitat plus recreation plus microclimate benefits. Phased implementation that tries to keep the green-blue structure functioning even as density increases over time. Brownfield revitalization. Aspern Seestadt, Vienna, is a large brownfield-to-city redevelopment on the former Aspern airfield in Vienna's 22nd district, planned as a city within a city that combines compact urban form with smart city experimentation. Construction started in 2007. The article describes it as spread over 240 hectares, aiming, by completion around 2030, for 25,000 plus residents and 20,000 workplaces. The comprehensive plan pushes a balance of density and open space. 50% of the area is reserved as green, open space, paths, tree-lined streets, while overall density is described as nearly double Vienna's average. A key centerpiece is the swimmable artificial lake, framed not just as recreation but as part of a circular economy approach. Gravel from excavation is processed on site into construction materials. Seestadt presents itself as a pioneer of the sponge city principle, using underground reservoirs, storage layers along streets and paths to capture rainwater, buffer heavy rainfall, and supply trees during dry periods. Parks such as Elinor Ostrom Park and Hannah Arendt Park are using rain gardens that allow water to collect and infiltrate instead of being sent directly to sewers. Vienna's EPD documentation explains the technical idea behind Schwammstadt, layered substructure, coarse and water storing materials, designed so trees can access stored rainwater, reducing irrigation needs and mitigating flooding. There was applied principle 40-40-20, 40% public transport, 40% walking, cycling, 20% private cars. A key implementation tool is parking in collective garages placed at the edges of quarters, to keep internal streets calmer and freer for green, public space, supported by e-charging and car sharing. Ciutat is framed as a city of short distances, where mixed ground floor uses are intentionally supported to make walking viable from early stages. Aspern Ciutat is presented as pursuing ambitious climate performance via an Aspern Climate Fit standard, aiming toward a greenhouse gas neutral economy by 2040, emphasizing high-efficiency buildings, renewables, e-mobility, and summer heat mitigation. Peri-urban landscape park Zdenka Kopola, Litomyshl, Czech Republic, is designed as a landscape at the city edge, an open, sloping meadow landscape that visually connects to the surrounding countryside while functioning as a public park. The key landscape design move is shaping the hillside into gentle, contour-parallel waves, shallow berms with grassy swales between them. These ribbed terraces work like rice paddy steps, temporarily storing rainwater and slowing runoff. Planting is integral to both identity and hydrology. The park emphasizes an orchard-like structure with traditional fruit varieties, while the ground layer is managed as flowering meadow, not short-mown lawn, maintained through mosaic mowing to support biodiversity and seasonal character. A light public space layer, paths, simple furniture, and play elements, often described with custom details and timber seating, fits within the meadow framework rather than dominating it. Rainwater management addresses a specific problem. The site has no stream, but intense sheet and concentrated runoff from a steep agricultural catchment previously overwhelmed a storm sewer and carried mud into the urban area below. Instead of a single conventional dry detention basin with a large embankment, the built solution distributes retention across a cascade of berms and swales. 5 main swales above the planned senior home capture runoff, reduce erosion, and prevent uncontrolled outflow, with a reported total retention volume of 4,170 cubic meters. Open Landscape Deer Park Obelisk, Czech Republic, is a large-scale floodplain restoration in the Lednice Valtice Cultural Landscape, UNESCO, on the former Dyje River floodplain. Developed gradually from 2003 to 2020, it regenerates a landscape heavily altered after 1970s river canalization and intensive agriculture. Historically, the area flooded each spring, supporting meadows, oxbow lakes, and a diverse floodplain ecosystem. After regulation, meanders and oxbows dried out and were filled, floodplain meadows were converted to plowed fields, and ecological functions largely collapsed. A private owner consolidated the land, reported approximately 500 hectares plus approximately 200 hectares buffer, to restore floodplain functioning and biodiversity. Landscape architects combined historic maps and aerial photographs with field research to reconstruct both the functional landscape structure and the Liechtenstein cultural compositional logic, especially long vistas and landmark connections, with the obelisk as a key visual element. The core intervention is re-establishing water processes through Water System 2.0. Former oxbow lakes were re-excavated and refilled, supplied by new water management infrastructure that enables controlled flooding and simulation of spring inundation. The project is presented as a model for floodplain restoration and water retention that can help mitigate climate change impacts in similar European landscapes. How the landscape has changed. Hydrology and landform. From drained fields to a wetland meadow mosaic. Before, after river regulation in the 1970s, meanders and oxbow lakes dried out, were filled, and floodplain meadows were converted into repeatedly plowed fields. So the floodplain largely stopped functioning as a floodplain. After, the project re-excavated former oxbow lakes, blind branches and refilled them. A new, Water System 2.0, brings water back into the oxbows and enables managed water levels that can simulate spring flooding. At the same time, the area is described as a dry polder that can be intentionally flooded during flood season. Because inundation is part of the design logic, elevated refuge areas were created for animals during floods. Reported physical outputs include 14 new pools, ponds, 42 hectares of lakes, and 28 hectares of wetlands within a total area cited as 540 hectares. Vegetation structure. from monoculture fields to meadows, groves, and floodplain trees. Before, drained floodplain soils with weak agricultural performance and simplified vegetation structure. After, plowed fields were converted back to meadows. Restoration used hay transfer from local floodplain vegetation, hay full of plant seeds, to reintroduce site-adapted species. Designers report planting about 1,500 trees, solitaires and lines, and tens of thousands of seedlings in clusters and woodland patches. The owner's materials also note an expansion of roughly 100 hectares of forest over 17 years, with typical floodplain groups such as oaks, alders, and willows, plus old fruit varieties. Microclimate and drought resilience, the green island effect. A key stated outcome is that re-wetting restored the soil's retention capacity, so even in summer the area behaves like a green island, compared with surrounding dry fields, an explicit climate adaptation co-benefit. Biodiversity and habitat refuge. Fencing plus water equals rapid return of species. Initially a deer breeding preserve, the site evolved into a broader wildlife refuge. Fencing limits access, dogs are excluded, and disturbance is reduced. With water and habitat structure restored, designers describe a strong increase in birds, small animals, and floodplain plants. Cultural landscape legibility. Restoration as composition, not only ecology. Beyond ecology and hydrology, the landscape was composed to reconnect with the historic Lednice-Valtise, Liechtenstein landscape tradition. Especially view corridors and long-distance vistas toward the obelisk and other landmarks, e.g., minaret, church spires. What these projects have in common, and why that matters for resilient cities: they consistently treat public space as multifunctional infrastructure, not only amenity. Across scales, residential open spaces, right pointing arrow neighborhood, right pointing arrow district, right pointing arrow landscape. The shared pattern is water sensitivity, sponge logic, store, slow, infiltrate, and safely route rainfall, ponds, rain gardens, basins, floodplain restoration, instead of relying only on sewers. Nature-based solutions plus biodiversity, trees, meadows, diverse planting, and habitat supporting management are used to reduce heat stress and strengthen urban ecology. Regeneration of abandoned land, former industrial, rail, airport areas, Gleisdreieck, Fornebu, plus citywide transformations like Malmö, become assets through green-blue investment. Social resilience. Many of these projects explicitly add everyday usability, play, gathering, safe routes, education, so adaptation infrastructure is accepted, maintained, and loved, critical for long-term performance.